Hello everyone. Before we go live, can I just ask everyone to turn their mobile phones off and say, as I need to do, that there is no planned fire alarm, so if it goes off, it's the real thing, so please exit the building the way you came in.
Okay, we're going to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the Institute for Government. Welcome to those of you who are joining us online and those of you who are here with us in the room at Carlton Gardens. I'm Hannah White and I'm CEO of the Institute for Government, and I'm very pleased to welcome you here today for this keynote speech by the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch. Now, we know that the declining performance of public services was an issue that was at the forefront of voters' minds at the 2024 election. And we know from polling that voters care a lot about their access to and the quality of public services. This is an area where the Institute for Government has done a lot of work. So I'm really looking forward to hearing Kemi's thoughts on what reforms a Conservative government would make to public services and the civil service, particularly to how the public sector implements the Equality Act and how the public sector equality duty affects the delivery of services. And just to say, in terms of choreography, Kemi is going to speak, and then I'm going to ask her a couple of questions before we come to questions from the floor. Do join me in welcoming the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, can I start by thanking the Institute for Government for hosting this speech on a very important and very sensitive matter. The body cam footage of Henry Novak's death is one of the hardest things I have ever watched because I knew what was going to happen. As I was watching it, I found myself willing the police to stop, willing them to think, to at least consider Henry's story and check if he had been stabbed. A lot of people have given all sorts of opinions. Some have blamed social media, others have blamed knives, racism, or the police. Some have tried to score political points, others have tried to avoid seeing what was there for all of us to see. There's been recrimination and finger-pointing, and believe me, there are many I'd like to point my finger at, but the job of a politician is not to tell people to be angry or to make people angry. It is to offer solutions. Henry's family could not have been clearer that they don't want his murder to be used as a weapon to divide. I met them last week. They are brave but broken-hearted. None of us would want to be in their shoes. What they want is for something good to come out of the outpouring of public shock and grief. They want the police to become an institution that we can trust again. And if we want to honor that wish, to honor Henry's memory, we need to ask the right question. I believe that question is, why did the police take an accusation of racism more seriously than the claim that Henry had been stabbed? This question goes beyond policing. Why are public bodies so unable to act with common sense when race or identity is involved? Why are they so distracted, busying themselves with things that have nothing to do with their core function? In March, I gave a speech explaining that the Conservative Party will remove identity politics from all public bodies. The speech I'm giving today is the result of work we have been doing over many months. Some of what I'm going to say is going to be very uncomfortable. But our job as legislators is to ask uncomfortable questions so we can do the right thing for the country. And the right thing for the country is to make sure the circumstances around Henry's tragic death never happen again. It is easy to blame the police officers who responded to that 999 call for what happened. The person most to blame was Henry's murderer. But the lack of common sense and the lack of compassion shown by the police was shocking. Something clearly went very wrong, and that is why I have asked the Prime Minister for a rapid and independent review. In some ways, I feel for those police officers because they were following guidance they have been trained on. guidance which does not apply equality under the law, guidance which says hate crimes should be treated as a priority. Many people don't know what is in this guidance, and that is why it needs to be exposed. This country was built on a belief in equality under the law. Magna Carta, the abolition of slavery, universal suffrage. Over centuries, we have enshrined in our law our belief that everybody in this country is equal. There is a reason Lady Justice is blindfolded. The idea that each person should be treated the same, regardless of who they are, is a value so deeply ingrained in our culture that most people in Britain accept it as a self-evident truth. But while we have been going about our business, activists have been taking Lady Justice's blindfold off. They want the law to treat people differently on the basis of identity groups, eroding a centuries-old principle that has made Britain the amazing country that it is today. Equality law, properly designed, should protect us all in the same way. It should be a shield, not a sword. It should protect people from discrimination. It should protect people from being treated differently because of their race, sex, religion, sexuality, disability, or age. This understanding and this principle are being perverted. Treating people equally and fairly will not deliver equality of outcome because sometimes a difference in outcome is fair. Modern Britain is the least racist country on earth. I speak from experience. As a child, I lived on 3 different continents. I have seen what life is like for ethnic minorities in other places. There is nowhere else on earth I'd rather be. There is nowhere else on earth that I would be doing the job that I'm doing right now as a black woman in a majority white country. It is because we are not racist, because we care so much about equality, that we have overcorrected and actually brought in rules that are actually discriminatory. How did this happen? When we saw high-profile incidents of injustice, like the murder of Stephen Lawrence, there was rightly public pressure to ensure an injustice like that never happened again. Stephen Lawrence's murder resulted in the influential Macpherson report, a report that wanted to put right what went wrong with policing in the 1990s. However, in attempting to do so, it also enshrined a principle which I believe is wrong, that a racist incident is racist if it is perceived as racist by the victim or any other person. This may have made sense in a different context long ago, but today, when we look at the response to Henry Novak's murder and the police's acceptance that the murderer was correct when he accused Henry of racism, it is clear that mere accusations are being accepted as facts. The Macpherson report led in 2001 to the race equality duty, which then morphed in the Equality Act to the public sector equality duty, which is what I'm talking about today, covering everything from race to sex to sexuality and much more. What do the Nottingham murders, the Southport attack, the Manchester Arena bombings, and the rape gangs all have in common? All these crimes could have been stopped if people had intervened instead of having a fear of being called racist. We would not have had so many girls abused by rape gangs if local authorities had not looked away because they were too scared to point out the obvious. That's why those unspeakable crimes went on for years. One parent told me that when she gave the description of her daughter's abuser, the police accused her of being racist. If the security guards at the Manchester Arena weren't afraid of being accused of racial profiling, we wouldn't have seen a bomber walk into the venue unchecked. If authorities weren't concerned that black people were overrepresented in mental health units, 3 people would not have been murdered in Nottingham by a man who should have been detained under the Mental Health Act. And if authorities hadn't chalked up Axel Rudekabana's violent behavior to autism, if his head teacher hadn't been accused of racial stereotyping when she raised concerns about him bringing a knife into school, 3 little girls might still be with us. Their families are all living a life sentence because others were too scared to raise the alarm. Some people will try to make race the cause of the crime. Race is not the cause of those crimes, but it is the reason these crimes are not being prevented. If public services were prioritizing their duty to citizens, the last words that Henry Novak ever heard would not have been a police officer reading him his rights. Each of these tragedies is different, but they expose a common weakness. Authorities conditioned to see minority status as victimhood. They withhold information, they avoid difficult conversations, and they allow reputational concerns to dominate their decision-making. They have spent so long worrying about institutional racism that they have become institutionally incompetent. They are systematically failing to fulfill their role to do what they are there to do. In the case of the police, catch and stop criminals. Section people whose mental health demands it. Investigate suspicious behavior. Confidence in our institutions is now collapsing. And how could it not? When people can see, as we do in my own constituency, Gypsy, Roma and traveller communities breaking laws that no one else would get away with. When rapists are being put in women's prisons because the justice system prioritizes the protected characteristic of gender reassignment over women's privacy, dignity, and safety. When people see pro-Palestinian marchers chanting slogans that others would be sent to jail for tweeting. People will believe in two-tier policing when they see this. Common sense has gone out of the window, and people are left wondering which rules apply to whom. You can see how we got here. Each time a high-profile case involving race happened, like the shooting of Mark Duggan that sparked the 2011 London riots, or in 2022, the shooting of Chris Cabba, a man under suspicion of a double murder, police officers like Martin Blake were dragged through long and degrading public inquiries. These institutions stopped worrying about getting the law wrong and worried desperately about a career-ending accusation of racism. The safest path for them to avoid this accusation was not common sense or the facts in front of them. It was to follow the process. So people replaced thinking with box ticking. They outsourced decision-making to activists and left-wing pressure groups. I'll give you an example. The head of the supposedly independent Scrutiny and Oversight Board, a board which audits the police race action plans, the head of this tweeted about defunding the police. She was asked about her comments on the Today programme yesterday and defended her views. Some of these people don't believe we should have a police service at all. So I want to be clear. The Conservative Party is the party of law and order. We are the party of law and order. We want to fund, not defund the police. And the reason why we want to triple stop and search and hire 10,000 more police officers is because we believe that this will lead to safer streets. I'm afraid it doesn't matter if more black boys are searched because it will mean more black lives are saved. The police's own guidance now explicitly says that people should be treated differently because of protected characteristics. Equality under the law, this guiding principle on which our great nation was built, is being thrown away. Some will ask, why didn't you do anything in government? I did, and I paid a price for it. I challenged the idea that every disparity is racism. I stopped terrible guidance and legislation asking us to treat COVID as a racist disease. I backed work showing that white working-class boys were among the most disadvantaged children in Britain, if not the most disadvantaged. That did not fit the institutional racism story, so I was attacked for it. But I didn't back down, because if the facts embarrass your ideology, the problem is your ideology, not the facts. I remember being called all sorts of names. I was called a coconut, an Uncle Tom, the black face of white supremacy. not just by activists and silly academics, but even by Labour MPs, people who should have known better. And that is why today I am not bothered by Reform MPs promoting fake adverts quoting me out of context. Nobody believes their lies, not even Nigel Farage, who praised me for my stance at the time. I met police chiefs, the Met, police and crime commissioners, and the College of Policing. I told them plainly, race action plans born out of Black Lives Matter would create the very mistrust they wanted to solve. I warned at the time that there would be a backlash. I published the evidence, I issued guidance, I wrote to public bodies again and again, telling them the same thing. Equality means treating people as individuals, not sorting them into groups. I did everything within my power, but the Equalities Minister can only warn. She has no power to command every police force, NHS trust, school or council in the country. Some listened, others simply stalled, waiting for someone else, perhaps a Labour government or another minister, who would indulge this ideology. The police pointed to the Macpherson report when I spoke to them, and they told me that I was wrong, that disparities in outcomes proved they must be institutionally racist. This was the police telling me that. But I didn't back down then, and I'm not going to back down now. I have spent my political career fighting against identity politics on the left, when it came from Labour, Lib Dems, the SNP, and I will do exactly the same against identity politics when it comes from Reform UK. The answer to Black Lives Matter is not a White Lives Matter born of the same racial grievance. We will not defeat identity politics by building a mirror image of it. There is a silent majority across our country who want order, fairness, common sense, and one law for everyone. Everyone matters. These are the people the Conservative Party stands for, and that is the country we can be again. And this isn't about replacing one bureaucracy with another. I hate bureaucracy. The Conservative Party's answer to this problem rests on three principles that distinguish us from every other party. The first is universalism. That means every citizen must be treated as an individual, not as part of a group. The second is that differences in outcome are not proof of discrimination. Just because men and women or the young and old have differences doesn't mean these are problems of ageism or sexism. We need to examine the facts and the evidence before ideology. If you diagnose everything as racism or sexism or ageism, you won't solve the underlying issue. The third principle is that we rebuild trust in failing institutions, not undermine them. We must find the root cause of failure and tackle it, rather than destroying trust for political or other gain. Conservatives believe in our institutions. Institutions are not perfect, but we want to fix a broken system, not smash it to pieces because we are angry. And don't get me wrong, we are angry. I am angry. But rage is not a strategy. Rage is not a solution. In March, I gave a speech about separatism and how we need to remove identity politics from public life. I asked the respected barrister Andrew Dinsmore to advise me on how we do this and how we bring back the principle of meritocracy and equality under the law. This is the solution. There are so many problems to fix. Many of them are currently being caused by the public sector equality duty in the Equality Act. This duty is subjective, with no clear rules, and whatever its intention, in practice, it has become a minefield that exposes almost every significant public decision to legal challenge. It is astonishing that late last year, the government lost a case in the High Court against a group of dangerous prisoners. These were prisoners convicted of Islamic terrorism. They were separated from other prisoners to stop them spreading their ideology. But a court found that prison officers had breached their duty because this separation was disproportionately affecting Muslims. This is crazy. These terrorists could now be eligible for compensation. This is madness. This duty is compromising security decisions like isolating dangerous criminals in case the terrorists call us racist. Far from equal outcomes, this duty is leading to ludicrous outcomes. Like Norfolk Police telling a job applicant that because of her gender-critical views, i.e. biological sex is real, that she would not be suitable. The public sector equality duty has turned equality into a zero-sum game, where some groups are preferred over others. And the more public bodies chase equality of outcome, the further they move from equal treatment and equality under the law. That's why I can announce today that a Conservative government will repeal the public sector equality duty in its entirety. We do not need to replace the duty. We need to explain to people that they should do their jobs. I was elected leader of the Conservative Party because I promised to unravel the Blairite legal settlement. There are many laws which were brought in with good intentions, but are delivering perverse outcomes and unintended consequences. We are making policy changes now carefully and thoughtfully, as proved by the serious piece of work that has been done by Andrew Dinsmore. I don't want this to be a party political issue. I would very much like this to be a cross-party issue. This is not a left or right-wing problem. It is a common sense problem. But currently, we are the only party that recognizes what the issue is. Labour are not yet sure anything is wrong. And Reform, who are talking about White Lives Matter, announced that they would abolish the entire Equality Act. So let me be clear. That would mean that it would be legal to discriminate against white people. Is that really what they want? They're not doing their homework. What Reform don't understand is that anti-discrimination legislation protects us all, because it is race and sex that are protected, not being black or white, male or female. The Equality Act protects a white man as much as a black woman, but the public sector equality duty does not. That's why we are going to overhaul the Act, starting by removing this duty. This is not just a technical change to the law. This is part of our plan to remove identity politics entirely from the public sector. Hopefully, the private sector will follow suit because they have this problem too, but government should get its own house in order first. So let me conclude with a story from when I was local government minister back in 2021. Some councils spend up to 70% of their funding on social care, a burden which was crushing many of them. I wanted to allocate more money to councils who had greater social care responsibilities. But my officials told me that because of the public sector equality duty, we would be sued, because the policy would disproportionately benefit white, elderly Christian people. I told them that I was happy to be sued, because any ounce of common sense would tell you that the majority of people in Britain needing social care are white, elderly Christian people. This isn't just about our public institutions. It is about our culture and who we are as a country. For years, people have been encouraged to see themselves as part of an identity group rather than one culture and one nation. Britain must reject tribal politics from both left and right. The Conservatives are not choosing one identity group over another. We are saying government must look after everybody. And we must fix this for the sake of our children. Otherwise, we will leave them a more dangerous and more divided world. It is not fair on black or white children to grow up unable to trust the police. If we want Henry Novak's tragic death to have a positive legacy, it must be a country brought together rather than one pulled apart, and for trust in our police and public services to be rebuilt. That will only happen when we take ideology out of these institutions, restore equal treatment, and give good public servants the confidence to use common sense. Britain must be brought back to the principle that protects us all. Equality under the law, one rulebook, one standard, and only one public duty: to serve the country equally. Thank you. Thank you. And next, thank you. Next, I'm going to take some questions from the media, and then I will take questions. I'll sit down for a conversation with Anna. Yes.
I've got some questions for you first, I think.
Oh, you want to ask me questions
yes,
first?
Please.
Well, if the media will be very patient, because I know that you have lots of things that you want to ask me, but we will start with Hannah's questions, and then I will come back here and do the questions with the media.
Great. Thank you. And I want to start by associating the Institute with the remarks you made about the Henry Novak case and the importance of respecting the wishes of his family at this very difficult time for them. I would ask you about the difference this change will make for people. 1 in 10 people waited more than 12 hours for care in A&E last year. The median wait for elective care is more than double what it was in 2010 when the Conservatives came to power. The average time it takes for the police to charge an offence has tripled from 2 to 6 weeks in the last 10 years. So how will scrapping the public sector equality duty help improve those problems?
It will stop public officials from wasting their time on a lot of things that have nothing to do with delivering frontline services. That's how.
But I think you would accept, would you not, that the amount of time and money spent on EDI initiatives is in relative terms very small. For example, total police spending in 25-26 was just under £21 billion, and so you would be only freeing up less than 0.5% of that budget by stopping spending the money.
So it's quite important that we don't allow this to be just paperwork. The second, third, fourth order consequences of the way the people are carrying out their jobs is wasting a lot of time and money. We've estimated that it's about £420 million. But that's just on the public activity. How much have the Nottingham murders cost us? How much have the Southport murders cost us? Because they don't count the consequences as, in that way. If you look at the actions and the loss of trust, this is costing us billions. We need to get people focused on delivering their core functions. I've just given you an example of how even the social care funding formula was something that was questioned. I was the Equalities Minister at the time. Most people would just have backed down and said, well, that's what we're supposed to do. Even the officials don't know how to carry out their duty. It's not just that we're hiring lots of people to do this and carry out equality impacts assessments. They are spending a lot of time not focused on the job. HS2 has cost more money because of these, the public sector equality duty. It's not just policing, and the private sector looks at the public sector and copies. We will save a lot, but there is no price that I'm going to put on rebuilding trust.
So the protection from direct and indirect discrimination, which is provided by the Equality Act, which you say we should rely on, is retroactive, isn't it? So whereas the public sector equality duty puts a requirement on public authorities to consider individuals' differences in advance, and is specifically about working towards equality of opportunity rather than outcomes. So if you remove the public sector equality duty, don't you risk disadvantaging the most vulnerable people who will find it hardest to use the Equality Act to challenge instances of discrimination, because you remove the incentive for public services to think about their needs in advance, because they aren't the ones who are going to challenge?
No, I completely disagree. The Equality Act should be a shield protecting people from discrimination, not a sword for people to look for the opportunities to create.
But that does rely on people being able to use that shield.
Yes, but the shield is there. The public sector equality duty is not the shield. It's doing something completely different. The Equality Act has Section 18, I can't remember which one specifically. Section 18, for example, protects pregnancy and goes into a lot of detail about that. I heard Liz Kendall this morning saying that if we got rid of the public sector equality duty, then pregnant women wouldn't be protected. This is nonsense. That's not how it works. And the fact that I, as Equalities Minister, was constantly having to explain to people what the duty meant and how they should go about it, was a waste of my time. It was not just a waste of my time. It shows that everybody is getting it wrong. I have trust in people. I don't believe the public service is full of lots of racists and people who don't care about disability, and unless they're giving this box to tick, they're not going to do that. I don't believe that. And we should stop enshrining that belief. It is making, and I say this listening to other ethnic minorities, especially young people, it makes them feel that every white person is racist and it's only the law that is protecting them. That is not what our country is. We need to change the culture. We need to sweep all of this stuff away. It is not getting better. The law of diminishing returns is applying to these regulations. We need to get back to the core function of public services, frontline delivery.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can see I'm very exercised about this. I am the country's longest serving equalities minister. So there is a lot that I've seen and a lot that needs to change. But now I'm happy to take questions from the media. Cardinin from ITV.
Thank you very much. I suppose people who support some of these measures would argue that in order to treat people equally, you have to be able to take account of their differences. And that means not treating them in exactly the same way, because you have to take account of disabilities, levels of understanding, and perhaps in some cases the degree to which they have trust in the public authorities that are dealing with them. Aren't you removing the requirement to take account of people's differences?
No, not at all. In fact, we're making it easier and better, because what we're bringing back is common sense. The public sector equality duty has put rapists in women's prisons. That is not common sense. You don't need a duty to tell you to take account of differences. Quite often, differences are obvious. We don't need the protected characteristic of age and the public sector equality duty to tell us not to treat children in the same way that we treat adults. What is happening is that people have stopped thinking and are just trying to follow the process so they don't get into trouble. I want people to bring their judgment back. If you don't have good judgment, you shouldn't be in the job. If you need a box to tell you not to put a rapist in a woman's prison, or actually the box is telling you to do that, then something has gone horribly wrong. So what I am bringing back is common sense. Next question, Ali Fortescue from Sky News.
Hiya. Ali Fortescue from Sky News. Can I just be really clear on the point of principle here? Do you accept the principle that some people do need to be treated differently, some people from different groups need to be treated differently for there to be fairness? Can I just get a yes or no on that? And can I also ask, you're someone who previously talked about becoming working class after working at McDonald's. You just then said that we need to treat people as individuals, not part of a group. How far do you take that? Does that include language and labels around class?
Right, okay. So the first question is, do I believe that people need to be treated differently in certain circumstances? Yes, but the principle remains the same, that equality under the law. One of the things that I try to explain is that we are not creating a hierarchy of groups. A black man and a white woman are equally cared for by the Equality Act. It's the public sector duty that asks people to start making various adjustments. Common sense can fix this. Of course, there are incidents of racism, but you don't need to ask the police to accept as a fact anyone saying this is racist, irrespective of what is in front of them, irrespective of the circumstances, because you wouldn't do that if it was if the individuals were different. That's what I'm saying. Let's bring equal treatment back. Of course, if someone has cancer, we're not going to treat them in a hospital like someone who doesn't have cancer. But you don't need the Equality Act to tell you these things. This is what I'm saying, that we have retreated into such a place that we don't even have the confidence to apply things that are obvious. And on the point of labels, as it stands, the Act does not have class as a protected characteristic. But I actually published a report, as I said in the speech, that talked about how white working class boys were disadvantaged. You don't need laws to tell you to think about these things. You should just know. We should just know. Alex Forsyth from the BBC.
Thank you very much. You just said you don't need to think about this stuff, you should just know. What would you say to the people that are listening to you today and think, if you don't put this duty on public bodies to actively think about it, what you might be doing is damaging the cause of people who have faced discrimination for decades. And can I ask, when you were in government, did you suggest this should be scrapped?
So I would say to those people that the Equality Act protects your rights, but we need to make sure that we do not create a society where people retreat into groups. We are seeing separatism in our country occur because different people are being treated differently. And when you have that, there will be a backlash. I made this comment to people who were promoting the Black Lives Matter movement, that if you keep saying this, you're going to get other people who say, well, I want to talk about white lives. And now we have both. That hasn't brought anybody together. So I'm not saying that there is a perfect solution. I am saying that this is the best way for us to remove discrimination from the law while still protecting equality under the law. And that is something that I will continue to fight for. No, I did not ask to remove the PSED. I kept trying to explain to people how to make sure they complied with the law in the Equality Act. And after writing thousands of letters, I've decided that people just need to have this public sector equality duty removed, because when I tried to get them to think more carefully and sensibly about it, they ignored it. So now we're just going to get rid of it, and that should fix the problem. Catherine Forster, GB News.
Thank you. So much focus rightly on the appalling death of Henry Novak, but the Nottingham inquiry concluded yesterday with the message that they had been failed at all levels. But we do know that one of the psychiatrists had resisted sectioning Caine because she was worried about the overrepresentation of black men with schizophrenia in institutions. What's your message to people who feel queasy about what you are suggesting, given some of those facts? And also, if I may, what is your response to the horrific attempted murder yesterday in Belfast, the police saying that a Somalian man in his 30s now under arrest for attempted murder? Thank you.
Thank you. So on the Nottingham murders, what I would say is that this is exactly the sort of situation that we're trying to prevent. If you have mental health issues and you need to be sectioned and you need to be detained, you should be sectioned, you should be detained. No one should be counting how many other black people have been sectioned or detained and say, well, this is too much, so we'll let you go. That is a complete absence of common sense. And we need to bring the common sense back. This is what I am pushing for. We know that there will be some cases where people are discriminated against. There are powers in the Equality Act to deal with that, whether you're white or black. Let's use those, but not this duty that basically tells people to ignore things that need to be dealt with. On Belfast, I've seen some grainy images. Again, I'm absolutely horrified. It is a horrific incident. I haven't heard anything about who the attacker might have been, but I think a lot of people will start wondering yet again, is this someone who should not have been in our country? Have there been failings around our borders? I would urge the police to bring the facts out as quickly as possible so that we can get some clarity. But it is yet another reminder that we do need stronger borders. This is why it is Conservative policy to leave the Convention on Human Rights. That's why we have a borders bill. It's been 2 years. The Prime Minister has not smashed any gangs or stopped any boats. This is a problem. I don't know if that person was someone who came in via that route, but today I'm talking about rebuilding trust with the public and their trust in public institutions. One of the ways that we are failing the public is by making them think that we have not got a grip on crime, on borders, on managing dangerous and difficult people in our society. And we need to show them that we get it and that we can solve these things quickly so that lives are saved and crimes are prevented. Andy Bell, Channel 5.
Thank you very much, Andy Bell, 5 News. In a society where inequality of outcomes is at least a fact, isn't the duty that you're scrapping, couldn't that be a mechanism to improve that, and you're simply giving that up?
No, because the duty is already creating inequality of outcomes. It's already creating inequality of outcomes, and it is also destroying trust in institutions. I have lived in 3 continents. I lived in one where nobody trusted the institutions at all. It's very, very horrible. You need people to be able to understand that if you go to the police, they're going to do the same thing, whether you're a black person or a white person. They're going to do the same thing whether you're old or young, gay or straight. That's what we need. Of course, there will be circumstances around your identity that should be taken into account. But you don't need the police or the NHS to have it written to such an extent, as we saw in the case of Henry Novak, where an accusation, a mere accusation of racism, was taken more seriously than Henry saying that he had been stabbed. That cannot be right. Jason Groves, Daily Mail.
Thank you. A couple of things. Is this on the Equality Act, or are there other aspects of it that you've got in your sights? And with the situation at the moment, do you think the police can be trusted to deal properly with racially charged incidents?
So the answer to that question is yes. I do think that most frontline police officers are good people. I think a lot of the issues have actually been with the senior police chiefs. They were the ones who I spoke to, and they were the ones who told me, Kemi, you don't understand, we really are institutionally racist, and then could not explain exactly how they were. I feel for a lot of frontline police officers, even the ones in the Novak case who made some very serious mistakes, which need to be investigated and looked at. We need accountability. But when I look at police officers like Martin Blake, who was doing his job and then ended up being dragged through long public inquiries and exonerated. When I see police officers who say that they're not going to carry arms, the armed police officers, because they're worried about their lives and careers being ruined for doing what they know that they need to do, I worry. We need to look after the police as well. I'm very concerned about police welfare. So this is not an anti-police speech. It's actually pro-police, because I want to free them to be able to do their jobs without worrying about box ticking or compliance on issues that are not core to the function of saving lives and catching criminals. There will be more coming. I announced a Culture and Integration Commission. This is one of the pieces of work that has come out of it. I've been looking at this for years, and there is a lot that needs to be done. I think that we are at risk of separating. We look at Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland. They're all run by parties that want to break up the United Kingdom. So this isn't just about the Equality Act. This is about lawfare. And when I was elected leader of the Conservative Party, I said that we are going to unpick all of the lawfare that has grown and is stopping us from looking after patients, to catching criminals, to even getting houses built. We need to fix a whole bunch of things, but we also need to make sure that we promote British culture and one shared British identity. Ben Clatworthy, The Times.
Thank you. Kemi, you say that more black boys should be searched if it means more black lives will be saved. But is there not a risk that that will inflame tensions from a group who already feel that they're subject to more stop and search? And do you believe that therefore there should be quotas?
No, I don't believe in quotas. I never have, and I never will. But there will be, as I said at the beginning of the speech, some people who will feel uncomfortable. But the truth is that when black boys are searched more knives are found. The incidence of knife carrying is higher. So we can't leave people to carry knives because we think that we've searched enough people for today, because that means someone else's life gets lost. And the people who tell me more than anyone that they want stop and search are the mothers of young black boys who have been killed by their peers. They are killing each other. They're not going to look for people from other communities to kill. The carrying of knife crime harms the knife carrier's community before it harms all others. I want to save those lives. I want to save the people who are most at risk, whatever their background. And if that means doing some tough stuff, then I'm going to do some tough stuff. I'm not going to run away from an outcry and allow other people's children to be killed just so I can have a quiet life. That is not fair. Martina Betts from The Sun, please.
Thank you very much. Martina Betts from The Sun. Earlier this morning, you said that the National Black Police Association shouldn't exist. Do you think that all staff networks based on race, gender, sexuality in public service should be abolished, and why is that? And just quickly, you spoke a lot about restoring common sense. Sir Sadiq Khan blocked a deal with Palantir and the Met Police because he said that the company did not share the city's values. Is that an example of how ideology is basically being prioritized over getting results? Thank you.
On the Palantir question, yes, absolutely. All we should care about is how many lives are we saving in the NHS, not whether Palantir agrees with Sadiq Khan. Sadiq Khan has a lot of values that I don't share, and many other Londoners don't share. I think he should be focused on doing his job. And on the issue of identity groups, particularly in the public sector, I didn't say that they shouldn't exist. I don't like them, but I want to be very clear what the principle is. I believe in freedom of association. And if you are black police officers and you want to hang out together and go to the pub or play tennis, that's fine. But should you organize within the police and start changing policy on the basis of your race? No. And the way I know that that is not the right answer is because if you swapped the races and if you had the White Police Officers Association and said that they should start making policy for white people in the police, I think everyone would be up in arms. Certainly the usual suspects would be up in arms. We need to treat these groups differently. I don't think that we should stop people from wanting to hang out with other women and so on. I've been someone who believes very much in freedom of association. But the public sector is paid for by taxpayers. It's paid for by everyone. They should be serving everyone, not splitting themselves into groups. And that is why I don't think those identity networks in the civil service or the police should have any say in public policy or how those organizations are run. Only the people which politicians appoint to those bodies should be doing that. So I've still got a few more people. I've got David Williamson, Nick Guttridge, Noah Hoffman, Amelia Casalecchio, and Ben Quinn. So David Williamson, please.
Thanks so very much. Incredibly, we're almost 10 years away from the moment when Theresa May made her speech about burning injustices. And she said then, if you're black, you're treated more harshly by the criminal justice system than if you're white. Do you think those injustices have been tackled, or rather, we've seen such a decline in the criminal justice system that simply people from all backgrounds are now suffering injustices? And just on another note, the acting legend that's Idris Elba has said of James Bond, let's not try and make it woke, and suggested that some markets might not prefer a non-traditional Bond. Would you like to see someone from a different background playing 007?
So I agree with Idris Elba that we should not make James Bond woke, because that will ruin the entire franchise. But it is for the writers and the people who own the rights to make that decision, and then the public will deliver their verdict in terms of ticket sales. That's the way, I believe in capitalism. That's the way that it should work. On your question about Theresa May, I wish she had spoken to me about this at the time, because I think I might have framed some of what she said differently. I do believe that everyone suffers injustice. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. I do think that if you are an ethnic minority or any kind of minority, it is the fact of being in a minority that means that you are probably more likely to experience something that the majority group does not, whatever minority you are. That is a fact. That is why we have an Equality Act. That is why those laws are there, to prevent discrimination. But when you have public bodies then going beyond preventing discrimination to achieve outcomes and try and do something different and accept any mention of racism as true without examining the facts, that is a problem. And what I'm doing is changing the Conservative Party so that we start with the principles first, rather than start with the intention first. The principles are equality under the law. Disparities and differences in outcome are not necessarily racism. They might be, but if you jump to racism or whatever ism as the first rather than the last reason, you tend to actually create more problems. And the third is that when an institution has failed, let's not try and pull it down and destroy it. It's very hard to build institutions. Try and bring trust back by fixing those institutions. Those are the principles which we are starting with now. And when people understand that, they will understand why we have the policy, not just the policy in isolation. Nick Guttridge, Daily Telegraph.
Great, thank you. Could I ask on a slightly different one? We've reported on a government report this morning which shows that between 2015 and 2021, almost £30 billion of taxpayers' money went to Britain's enemies. This was COVID support and foreign aid predominantly, and those enemies were people like Islamic State, Russia, companies linked to the Chinese military. As taxes and state spending continue to go up and up, does it show there's a bit of a danger that ministers and officials are too naive about how taxpayers' money is being spent and where it is ending up? And should we be more wary in future of these sort of large grants programs?
I think we should always be wary of large grants programs and large spending. We are spending far too much as a country, and we're not making as much money as we used to. We're becoming less wealthy. So we do need to tackle that. But this is actually related. It's not a different issue. It is related to what I'm talking about. I was in the Treasury as a junior minister when we were implementing the policy. I didn't own that policy area, but I had to answer a lot of questions in Parliament. I was asking about fraud in the department. The questions in Parliament were not about fraud. They were asking why, how many women were getting these bounce-back loans, how many ethnic minorities were getting the bounce-back loans, why have black people been left out. The focus of our politicians as well has been in the wrong area. And perhaps if more people had been asking questions around probity and fraud and checks and balances, we wouldn't have had the appalling situation which you've just described. This issue, going back to Hannah's question, this issue is not just about how much money we spend on paperwork. With the amount of time that we are spending thinking about these things means that other real big issues are being neglected. And I want us to get back to core functions. Thank you. Noah Hoffman, Spectator.
Thank you. I know you don't like to encroach too much on the private sector, but on principle, what is your view on schemes, job schemes where only certain groups can apply, whether that's based on race or class, etc.? And very quickly, just off the back of the Theresa May comment, can you guarantee to the room and people watching that the entire Tory party, every MP, currently in the party is with you on this policy and on this position on identity politics?
Right. So, so I've forgotten the first half of your question.
Just like grad schemes where you have to be so-and-so to apply.
They are illegal. They are illegal. You're not allowed to discriminate. Positive discrimination is illegal. But positive action, where perhaps you might just want to encourage more people from various backgrounds to apply, is not. But that doesn't mean that you should hire someone because of their skin color. That is illegal. And this is one of the things which I was trying to explain, that many people don't understand the difference between positive action and positive discrimination. It is another area that we are looking at. But actually hiring people on the basis of skin color, even if you mean well, is illegal in the private sector. There are loads of companies that have been taken to tribunals, often by white people who have been discriminated against, rightly, and they've had to pay a lot of money to compensate. And this is why I say we're not getting rid of the Equality Act like Reform wants to. I don't even know what their policy is. They change it every 5 minutes. But they've now said they're abolishing the Equality Act. If they abolish the Equality Act, then it will become legal to discriminate against people, white or black. That's why we're not doing it. On the second question about whether the party agrees with me, the party knows where I stand on this issue. Today is not the first day that I've been talking about this, and I have said which direction we're going. It's this or nothing. I've said that we're signing a contract about the agenda we're taking into government, because I want everybody to understand what it is we're going to deliver. If there is a Conservative MP who does not believe in equality under the law or wants different treatment for different groups on the basis of skin color or protected characteristics, then they probably are not a Conservative MP. So they're probably something else. I believe that everyone in my party is with me, and if they're not with me now, then they will not be with me at the next election. Emilio Castellaccio, if I'm saying that right.
Probably. Yeah, don't worry. Thank you very much. You talked about how the Henry Novak case shouldn't be politicised. What are your thoughts about the way that Elon Musk has been going about talking about it, and the way that the debate has generally been fueled on Twitter? And similarly, what did you think about the intervention from the US Vice President on it last week?
So I think that, Twitter is a terrible place for having a civilized conversation. We all have to use it, politicians and journalists in particular. The parents have asked for it not to be politicized. Some people will. I've seen people even criticize the parents, saying it's not about you, it's about the rest of us. That's completely wrong. I disagree with the US Vice President's remarks, and I told him so, actually. We need to stop jumping to the conclusion that verifies the beliefs that we already had. And even I, someone with very strong beliefs, I do challenge myself. I don't immediately assume that what I think must be the reason. We talked about the Belfast case. I have my suspicions, but let's wait until the facts come out. That's how you don't politicize, and actually trying to work together. I'm not blaming any particular party for this. I think that we just need to change the culture across the board, and we should be able to work cross-party on this issue. Common sense is not a left or a right-wing thing. And finally, Ben Quinn from The Guardian.
Thank you. Can I just pick up on Martina's question? And you were very clear, you believe in freedom of association. Should public bodies continue to afford staff networks time off to organise and even use their property for that type of organisation? And secondly, if I may, you've raised the prospect of a civil war potentially happening at some stage in the UK in the future. What would you say to someone going about their business on the lovely streets of Saffron Walden this morning who's worried about that? What will the civil war look like if we don't head it off?
Okay, so starting with staff networks, I think that they should not be given time off to carry out these activities. My experience of staff networks in the civil service was that they were actually a way for some people to create a clique or a cabal who were then furthering their own personal careers at the expense of other civil servants. And the staff networks ended up being bad for some of their colleagues. I even saw, in some cases, bullying of other people who didn't share their views. So staff networks should not be anything more than social organizations. People can go to the pub or play sports or do other things outside work time. We are not, as taxpayers, paying civil servants to deal with their own self-actualization and sorting out their personal hobby horses. So I don't like them. I think they're very problematic. I think the senior civil service have not just failed to get a grip, they've actually encouraged it because it was a way of ticking boxes. And there are many good civil servants, many good civil servants who don't like this, but no one speaks for them. I am speaking for them now. And the Civil War comments you refer to were in an interview, much longer interview that I gave to the BBC. And the point I'm trying to make is not that we're on the cusp of a civil war, no, far from it, but that you sow seeds which end up sprouting very further along in the future, much further along, if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. And when you look at countries that have had civil wars, it is almost always, around identity. I grew up, my childhood was spent in a country where everybody looked like me. And people still found differences because there were 300 different ethnic groups, people spoke different languages, they had very different cultures that are probably imperceptible to those who were not living in that country. That's what I'm talking about, that we have to make sure that we are not doing things that seem nice or fun or easy now and creating bigger problems for our children tomorrow. I think about my children when I think about these policies. They are half black and half white, and I want them to feel that they can be both, that they don't need to choose, that no one is going to be judging them because they look like their mother or their father, but they'll be judging them as individuals. And that is a principle that I think all of us, whatever our political views, must share.
Can I just say thank you to everyone for joining us, and the recording of this event will be on our website shortly, so you can watch it back. But do join me in thanking Kemi one more time. Thank you.
Thank you.